Hello everybody, my name is Brady and we are back with another React video, and today we're going to be checking out more Salmonella. We have true stories about chimps, which should be a lot of fun. Normally I do his videos that are related to history, social studies, and that type of stuff, but we've already gone so far down the Salmonella rabbit hole, it'd be weird if I ignored the video that says true stories about chimps. I can only imagine this is going to be a whole lot of fun. Maybe tragic, I don't really know, but I'm excited to see where it goes. Let's get it started.
Hey kids,
There's
so we
no
all
water
know
in
that,
there.
as far as living things go, humans win, not even a contest. But it turns out, if you hop to the next genome over and look
Is it
real
a gift or
carefully,
is it a
you can
curse,
actually
though?
see a basic version of a lot of the stuff that makes us so great. Here's some stories about what chimpanzees can get down to in the right context. Talking about chimp tales? Now, North Korea's Pyongyang Central Zoo has a colorful
North
history,
Korea.
from its humble beginnings as literally just
could be
50
interesting.
badgers and a fence, to the parrot they taught to recite poetry praising Kim Il-sung, to being the only place in Pyongyang where you can look at a dog legally. It seems the only thing that's remained constant throughout this zoo's life is that it's fucking depressing.
Excuse me, the dog thing, like why? This is one thing about Salmonella videos, and I think it's great the way he does it. He's very smart, and he leaves you asking questions. He gives you just enough that you're asking the question, and sometimes he'll give you the answer, sometimes he won't. Like, why is it illegal to look at a dog? Like, what's wrong with that? Why specifically looking at a dog? It's actually so genius. I feel like he does this to bait people to comment things, and he probably gets so many comments that are like, what? Why is that? Timestamp, why is that? Or maybe he just does it as he does it and it just happens to work out really well. Either way, the guy's a genius in the way that he makes his videos. The parrot, that's pretty impressive. Even for like bigger parrots, like with him, he can say little things. He doesn't do it on command, so you don't get that. But he can say a few things, but it's like short things, like a couple words, like pretty baby, pretty bird, what are you doing? These are all things that he can say. But bigger parrots, I've seen say some pretty long, drawn-out phrases. I assume they do it by just repeating something back to them over and over and over again. You can do like positive reinforcement, or you can just overexpose them to stuff. So I'm gonna assume the worst, and that is just they play it back over and over again until the bird ends up repeating it. But there's also positive reinforcement, and if they're pretty good trainers, then maybe they were able to do this in a positive way. In which case, the parrot probably has one of the better existences in that zoo, because if you're positively reinforcing behavior like that, they get lots of snacks, lots of treats and stuff like that. So that's a thing.
It seems the only thing that's remained constant throughout this zoo's life is that it's fucking depressing. Fortunately, both workers and animals alike found ways to cope, one of which is smoking. Azalea the chimp is currently 13 years old
smoking
and is one
really
of the
bad
shining
there.
stars of Pyongyang Zoo, purely for her ability to burn through over a pack a day. Now, I like a good old-fashioned smoking chimp as much as the next guy, but whereas most zookeepers would probably try to talk her out of something so unhealthy, the North Korean ones actually gave her supplies, just like, feeling trapped,
Dude.
welcome to the club, pal. Her skills are actually pretty impressive. Not only can she use a lighter, but in a pinch, she also knows that old schoolyard trick of lighting one ciggy with the other. Just a shame that her mind wasn't put towards something a little more healthy or productive.
That's, of course, really depressing, and this is something that Salmonella leans into. Take the tragic and ridicule it and make light of it. That's the style. Everybody's all depressed. Why not we laugh at miserable things? I mean, what else are we gonna do? And I appreciate that style, but there is something inherently impressive about that. I don't really care as much about the smoking thing. That is what it is. I guess there is something kind of impressive about that. The usage of a lighter by a chimp, though, that's really impressive. Now they have fire, they're ready to evolve. But yeah, that sort of being able to use some sort of a mechanism like that is very impressive, just inherently.
Nah, you know what? That's pretty dope, actually. I'm happy with that. Flashback to 1954.
Poor
A
thing.
chimp named Congo was born in the London Zoo. Little did anybody know, this
Now
ape
we're in
was a
London.
prodigy. Out of curiosity, one of his zookeepers named Desmond Morris decided to give Congo a pencil and a piece of cardboard to see what he'd do. Almost immediately, he started drawing some rudimentary lines and shapes. Morris was like, whoa, and decided to let him try painting on for size. And what he saw was incredible. Congo created these beautiful renderings with a blend of realism
he
and
didn't.
self-expression that would make even the great masters
Absolutely
stare in
not.
awe.
This is
No,
not
I'm just
real.
fucking with you. They're garbage.
Okay.
But for a non-human, there's still something to be appreciated here. Congo had at least a very basic sense of composition. Like, you can see there's some balance to the images. Matter of fact, when his handler would make shapes on one side of the page, Congo would deliberately mark up the other side to maintain some kind of symmetry. He also had an artist's sense of
That's
self-entitlement,
pretty cool.
because whenever his owner tried to take away a picture before Congo thought it was finished, he'd literally go apeshit, all throwing a fit and screaming till they gave it back. But hey,
Jeepers.
painting done by a chimp. You know who likes pointless novelties like that? The incredibly rich. In 2005, 3 of Congo's paintings were up for auction next to works by 2 obscure little artists known as Andy Warhol and Pierre-Auguste
Warhol,
Renoir.
okay.
And while the 2 actual artist pieces went completely unsold, these 3 beauties got picked up for the scant price of over 25,000 US dollars. And
Well, okay, I don't get it because like I'm very minimalistic in what I spend my money on, unless it's the computer I'm using, which is way more powerful than it needs to be for what I do. Besides that, though, I'm very minimalistic in what I buy, so I wouldn't do that sort of thing. But there is a sort of novelty in having something that was painted by a chimp. It's a great story. You are showing people around your house. You walk by the painting, you'd be like, "This was painted by a chimp." That's a story. That is something kind of cool. And you could say, this is painted by Andy Warhol. Like, that's cool. But then you have this one that's painted by a chimp. What's a more one's more impressive, probably. And the other is like, oh, that's really cool. That this guy is interesting. I've seen things where, like, crows paint. And there's this one thing at an aquarium in Connecticut. Mystic Aquarium. I love that aquarium, and they have these paintings done by one of the animals. I'm gonna look up right now which one it was. Oh, it was one of the whales. That's what it was. Okay, I felt weird. I thought it was whales, but that felt too silly. I felt like if I said that and I ended up being wrong, I'd feel kind of stupid about it. Yeah, the whale does painting. Clearly, it's very simplistic, but they taught it to hold that thing, and it does a little paint thing. So it's really impressive when you see animals do human things. There is definitely a novelty to that. Okay, let's pull up the video again.
the guy was like, wow, I felt something for a second there. I really like the watermark on this, by the way. Like, this is my painting done by a chimp. Anyway, next we have this beast called Washa. Washa was the first non-human creature to learn to communicate through sign language. That's right, eat shit, Coco. Prior experiments in chimp communication had attempted to teach him some basic spoken language, but after
So I've seen stuff with chimps learning, or gorillas, or other sorts of apes or whatever, learning sign language. This is something that I've seen all over. I don't know how many actually can do it. I've seen it in certain forms of fiction as well, so I don't know how widespread that ability is. But this one's probably one of the least surprising.
After realizing that chimps are physically incapable of making most of the noises we do, they decided signing would be the better option. Washa was raised in an environment similar to what a human child would experience, complete with toys, clothes, chores, and even being allowed to sit at the dinner table, in spite of what the Bible clearly says about that. The scientists raising Washa made sure to only communicate in American Sign Language around her, in the hopes of establishing a true conversational rapport. Initially, they took a traditional Pavlovian approach by rewarding proper use of a new sign with food and tickles. But there were a couple problems with this. Firstly, the simple action reward setup meant that Washa didn't have to really understand the words she was signing, the same way a parrot saying I love you in a YouTube video always does it with those cold, unfeeling eyes. Second,
Yeah, that is a thing. Positive reinforcement is the thing. It doesn't mean he understands any of the stuff he says. When he said he'll understand what that does for him, if I reward him for doing certain behavior, he'll know that I do this, I get this, but he doesn't understand why I want him to do this. Like, I could have him do tricks and stuff, but he doesn't understand that he's doing a trick. He just understands that he's doing the thing that gets him a treat. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have any sort of affection. Parrots are very affectionate. I don't know as much about chimps, but the words are just something else. It's just it's sometimes we will hear our voices in them and we'll think, oh, they mean that. No, that's not how they express their affection. They don't say that they love each other in the wild. If they do care about each other, they express it in very different ways that we can't relate to nearly as well.
Washa would break into a laughing fit whenever they tickled her, to the point where the lesson would be essentially over.
You love
so the
me,
researchers abandoned this and instead just let her learn through observation of her caretaker signing, with much better results even in the total absence of reward stimuli. And the only downside was that the job title of designated chimp tickler ceased to exist. In total, Washa learned around 350 individual signs in ASL, and she'd even use these to formulate novel phrases for new objects. Like one time she wanted to talk about a thermos, but didn't know what a thermos was. She goes, metal cup a drink. Hey, scat, scat. A similar story comes from a chimp named Lucy, who was raised by one Dr. Maurice Temerlin and his wife, Jane. The tale...
I mean, we need one of those every single time. Usually that's when he runs, but I got an earpiece this time, so... we safe this time, bro. You can't get me this time, Salmonella.
Of Lucy's life,
can't scare my bird.
Woman is now officially the third most famous woman named Jane who worked with apes. In the same vein as Washa, the pair attempted to gain some insight into Lucy's weird chimp noggin by raising her like you would a human. You know, dressing herself, using silverware, making tea, looking at magazines, pretending she knows what a word is, all that jazz. But as Lucy matured, things took an ugly turn. For once, since she was brought up in a basically human environment, she eventually discovered the time-tested human pastime of alcohol. The pair would leave bottles of gin around their home with Lucy, which, I don't know how you'd make this mistake twice, but it was apparently a common occurrence for them to leave her alone for too long and come back like, honey? I think the monkey's fucking wasted again. Another one of her hobbies was sculpting crude human heads.
That should be an easy fix.
Her own poop, to be clear. They also left some copies of Playgirl magazine around for Lucy to flip through, which she became very fond of. So fond, in fact, that she was caught multiple times having relations with the vacuum cleaner.
They do that. The vacuum cleaner, no, I don't.
Went into detail.
I don't know if they do that. I don't know if they do that. I was about to say, apes pleasure themselves, but like that's more specific than I thought it would be. I'm gonna keep moving to get off this screen. Oh my god!
All I know is that, all things considered, some pretty exemplary tool use there. So the pair saw this and they were like, all right,
there is something kind of impressive about
and
that.
Fast. But the problem was, Lucy was conversing with people, eating with people, flicking the old chimp bean to people. So it's not a stretch to think that Lucy thought she was people. So imagine you're people and you get thrown into an enclosure with a full-grown, horny male chimp. You'd have a fucking panic attack. And that's just what Lucy did. As the years went on, Lucy got more and more violent, regularly trashing the place to get out the frustration of not being able to comprehend what was so fundamentally unnatural about her existence. Finally, the couple had had enough and decided to take Lucy to a primate rehabilitation center in the Gambia, with the hopes that she could be forced to acclimate to primate life. She could barely cope with it at first, getting real depressed and hardly associating with the other apes. Which you'd be depressed too if you had to give up a life of American luxury complete with booze and vacuum fornicating to go live with chimps in the wild. Or with the help of a graduate student.
That's so upsetting. And I've seen things like this where animals that are parts of like scientific experiments, like something happens, the experiment ends or the funding gets cut off and they have to adapt to a new environment and they just can't. I'm hoping there's a happy ending here.
Named Janice, Lucy eventually came to accept her fate, and although she'd never mate with another of her kind, she ended up getting along with her troop well enough. About a year after leaving the rehab center, Janice came back to visit, and Lucy gave her a warm embrace before waddling back to the rest of the chimps. Aw.
That's
then
nice.
Lucy got poached like a fucking egg, which kind of puts a damper on the whole happy ending, but, you know.
Yeah.
So if there's one lesson to be gained from all this, it's that the best way to learn something is to be immersed in it and to make it part of you. While treats are good for making dogs do backflips, true comprehension comes from integrating new things into your daily life. And what better way to do that than with some free audiobooks? Sponsor time. Listening to audiobooks inspires us,
that's a good segue right
brings
there.
us closer. And there's no better place to listen than Audible. If you want something kind of like what I do, except actually funny and well informed, you should check out the Infinite Monkey
don't be
Cage.
so hard on yourself.
Ricky Gervais show, except half comedians and half actual scientists. It's great. You can get your first audiobook free along with 2 selected Audible original titles when you start your 30-day trial. Just visit audible.com/salmonella or text salmonella to 500-500 to get started. Again, go to audible.com/SAMONELLA or text SAMONELLA to 500-500 to try Audible for free.
We good?
Link in the description.
We good? Is he done?
That's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and I fell down the stairs this morning.
Thanks, dude. Okay. That one was really cool. That one was better than I thought it would be. There's a really fun conversation to have about human animal relations. It's really cool. Seeing how some people manage to connect with them, is where those limitations are. I feel like in another life, I would have been a scientist if I was good at math. I would have loved to do that, but that never ended up happening. But I still find stuff like this, especially that stuff that relates to animals, I find that stuff to be so fascinating. So thank you guys for watching. We're going to be doing some more Salmonella in the near future. You got any other suggestions? Leave them in the comment section below. And until then, I will see you.